This is the IOA Podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Welcome, everyone, back to the IOA Podcast, and I'm Dr. Malika. I am your host, and this is a space for rooted healing, honest reflection, and collective care. So, before we get into talking about what we did in last week's episode, I want to introduce you to something important that we are doing for our WDJY listeners. This is exclusive. We are allowing them the opportunity to win merch and different things that I have simply by following the podcast on YouTube or on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, subscribing and filling out a form that shows that you have done these things. And so this particular sweepstakes is something that I'm really excited about because it gives an opportunity for the community to get things from me. And so I'm going to pull out a couple of things that we have that are important for you to be aware of. Of course, we have the book. You have an opportunity to win a copy of the book if you don't already have one, Rooted in Resilience. You can see me wearing the hoodie that says Healing Loudly and Living Softly. You have an opportunity to win this. We also have a hoodie form. I know it's getting warmer, but there's still some places where it's cool. And if you travel, these are good for traveling. We have our Rest is My Resistance hoodie. We have different t-shirts that you can get. We have the different monochromatic versions of Living Life Rooted as an option. But I'm super excited to allow you, the listeners, an opportunity to win some of the gear that we have. So the question is probably, how do I get this done? So you're going to have to stay through the episode. And when we come back from one of these breaks, I will give you more information about that. But I wanted to plug that at the top of the show. So as always, before we get into this, remember, we need you to like and subscribe to the podcast, like down here for this episode. It drives the algorithm, which allows people to know that we're here and allows them to be aware of the content that we are putting out weekly. And you can also find us, remember, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're now on iHeartRadio. We are on a lot of different platforms. So just search for the IOA Podcast with Dr. Malika. And I guarantee you will find us on any platform that you listen to. So last week, we opened up season number 2. So this is just our second episode. And what we were talking about was how to begin again after burnout, after dealing with grief or dealing with disappointment. We were talking about a return instead of performing. We were talking about honesty instead of the pressure that we often put on ourselves, and what it means to re-enter your life without pretending that nothing that you experienced happened. Today, I want to move that conversation a step further because beginning again is hard enough on its own, but it becomes even harder when you are trying to do it in isolation. So, today, our topic is about community care, specifically why community care matters more than ever when we're living in isolated times, and also understanding why healing cannot be reduced to something that is done purely privately in your space alone. This episode is very much anchored in the concept within my book, The Circle, and the schedule frames that I give around the real tension that happens. Loneliness is still with us. AI companionship is starting to become a wave. It's expanding. People are looking to connect in some kind of way, and they're using AI as a way to do that artificially. People are hungry for mutual care. They're hungry for these sacred circles. They're hungry for real belonging. So the central question is not whether or not people need connection. From a psychological standpoint, from a biological standpoint, we know this to be true. The question is what kind of connection can actually hold you in your life? There's a difference between access and actual intimacy. There's a difference between interaction and relationship. There's a difference between being visible and being deeply known. Some of us have group chats, we have packed calendars, we're in leadership positions, and we are people who are relied on, but we still feel honestly like we're not being held somewhere in our life. So some of us know how to encourage everyone else, but us getting the support that we need from everyone the prayer that we need from others, the room being made for us from others, we're not really knowing where we can go in order to have those things and for us to tell the truth. That is where I want us to begin in this episode. Community care is not trendy. It's not the language of the day. It's not a cute extra thing that you have after you've already figured out things on your own. Community care is part of how we survive, how we regulate, how we remember ourselves, and most importantly, how we heal. In Rooted in Resilience, the circle is described as a sacred structure and it's a spiritual technology. It's very much a radical form of memory and resistance in a world that's often shaped by a hierarchy and by hyper individualism. The book is reminding us that in a true circle, everyone is seen, everyone faces inward, and gathering becomes a way of returning to one another with reverence. So, in this episode, I want us to think about what isolation is doing to us, what real community care would actually look like, and how to discern safe circles from performative ones when it means that it's building the kind of belonging that we can actually hold on to and that respects and honors our humanity. So let's get into it. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to deal with talking about what isolation is actually doing to us. Be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. And I want to go a little bit deeper and talk about what I think is one of the most deceptive things about isolation. Is not that it doesn't always look dramatic, right? We can be isolated and it might be something that we don't normally recognize. Sometimes it very much is just us showing up as being independent. Sometimes it can look like us being competent, which means we're not going to others in order to get feedback on what we're doing or to get or hold space or have someone hold space for us, right? Sometimes it looks like being the one that everyone can count on, or it can come out with people saying things like, I'm good, I got it, or I don't want to bother anybody. I hear that a lot in my clinical practice with people. I didn't want to be a bother. I don't want to bother anyone, or I'll figure it out. Right. Sometimes it looks like keeping moving when and showing up. You still show up. You can do it beautifully, almost do it with your eyes closed. But quietly, you're feeling like there's nowhere for your whole self to basically land. And if we're being honest, many of us have survived through this type of structure and through this type of dynamic. We have been taught that strength means carrying things privately. We have been taught that asking for support is risky. We've been taught that our pain should be managed, explained well, spiritualized quickly, and don't get me started on spiritual bypassing, or turned into usefulness because it gets too inconvenient. We have been taught that if we can function, then we must be okay. But functioning is not a sign of being okay. Functioning is not a sign of being healthy, and it's not a sign of you being nourished in the way that you need to be. Being productive is not the same thing as being connected. Being needed is not the same thing as you being cared for. That is why the isolation can be so dangerous. It quietly is convincing you that self containment is a form of maturity, when reality, what it is disconnection. It's teaching us to call loneliness normal. It's teaching us to downplay what our bodies are carrying. It's teaching us to keep moving past signals that should be slowing us down. And the body feels all of that. It's going to understand what is happening and what's not being said based on how you're experiencing the world. To make this even more concrete for us, for Black communities, this conversation is not happening in a vacuum. It's happening in a climate of real pressure. In the United States, roughly two-thirds of Black Americans, about 64%, say that racial or ethnic discrimination is a very big problem for them. In February of 2026, the unemployment rate for Black workers was 7.7%, compared to their white counterparts at 3.7%. Also, there are reports that among adults with any type of mental illness or issue, 39% of Black adults received mental health services in the past year, compared to 58% of their white counterparts. And just over 4 in 10 Black adults, which is about 44%, say that they have at least a fair amount of nearby friends or family that they can ask for help or support, compared to 56% of white adults. Add that to the affordability strain, and we are all feeling it right now with the gas prices and all the different things that are happening, with half of Black adults at about 49% saying that it's difficult for them to afford things like healthcare costs. And you start to see why community care is not just a nice idea. It really is a survival structure for our community. So when I'm saying community care matters, I do not mean it as a soft add on to individual wellness. I really truly mean it as a part of how Black people have historically survived discrimination. It's how we've gotten through economic strain. It's how we've dealt with the structural under support that we have gotten in our history in this country. And when systems ask us to keep functioning while making it harder for us to be held. So, community care in Black life has never just been about socializing. It has been our form of protection. It's a memory, it's witness, it's resource sharing, and a way for us to help each other keep breathing when the world often gets heavy. One of the strongest lines in the book, Rooted in Resilience, and I'm not just saying this simply because I wrote it, is the reminder that trauma lives in our bodies and it thrives and grows in disconnection, while a well facilitated circle offers co regulation. It offers a nervous system level reminder that you are not alone. That matters because community is not only emotional or social, it is also physiological. There is something that happens in our body when you are with people who feel trustworthy, that reciprocate, and they are grounding. Your breathing changes, your muscles soften, your mind may stop scanning so hard. You may feel yourself exhale in ways that you didn't even realize you were withholding. So it's really important to understand that isolation does the opposite of that. It can intensify the shame. It makes your grief heavier. The fear that you're feeling will now feel like a reality. It distorts your self understanding because without witness, many people start believing things about themselves that are not true. They tell themselves that they are too much. They tell themselves that they're too needy, they're too emotional, they're too tired, too sensitive. You're behind. When what they really need is to be supported. So, what this is probably showing them is that they're actually unsupported when they thought that they were. Sometimes, what people interpret as personal failure is really relational deprivation. The issue is not you're weak, the issue is that you've been trying to hold a human life together without enough human support. So let me be clear if I haven't been so far. Solitude can be sacred. Reflection can require you to have some privacy. Rest can show up as quiet, but isolation is not the same thing. It's different. Isolation is what happens when you cut off yourself from mutuality, from witness, from honest care for so long that your body starts adapting to the disconnection as if this is normal. Then the hard part is this: you may start protecting that isolation because it begins to feel safer to you than risking disappointment. That is why this conversation matters so much right now. People are hungry for connection, but there's still a deep difference between something that simulates or masquerades as connection and the sacred complexity of mutual human care. Real community requires reciprocity. It requires accountability. It requires tenderness and boundaries and the possibility that I may have to make room for your reality or you may have to make room for mine. So the reason why I want to say this is because one of the things that I feel that we often get asked when it comes to the Black community and others outside is why we don't often willingly let them in. And what they may not understand is that the things that I gave are the reason why. In order for us to make room, you have to be willing to make room for us. You have to be willing to be accountable. You have to be willing to be trustworthy. And some of the things that we have seen historically have shown the opposite of that. This is not about us just being comfortable. We don't want to just say that we're in relationship for the sake of being in relationship. I cannot dismiss what happened previously with the vote at the UN and the statement that was made by this country on the world's biggest stage. That showed us that we still cannot relax. We still cannot be comfortable, right? Relationship is important, but relationship is a part of how we heal. It is not the only thing that is part of the healing process. So I want to stop here. I want us to come back and I want us to get into looking a little bit deeper into this in our next segment. Specifically, we are going to look at the circle, safe community, and the difference between being supported and having performance. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. I am so glad that you are still hanging around with me for the second episode of season number 2 of the IOA podcast. And so I wanted to remember to give the information on the giveaway. All right, because we did talk about that. And I want to make sure that you, if you are a listener on WDJY, that you have the ability to submit your entry to the giveaway. All right. And so I am going to share that now. Still will share it a little bit later, but I wanted to get us into the episode a significant amount in order for you to get this information. And so you will be submitting at this link. It is bit.ly, ly, /WDJY, all caps. Spring is capitalized, giveaway is capitalized. It is the WDJY Spring Giveaway. This is the link for you to submit to be drawn randomly as a winner of one of the prizes. So, just to give you kind of an overview of some of the things that you have a chance of winning, I talked about the merch with the gear. I talked about the opportunity for you to win a copy of the book. I did not talk about the fact that I have custom blended teas that you can actually get. So we have Aya Bloom and Aya Calm. These are herbal teas, no caffeine. They are organically made. And so the Aya Bloom is very much an energy driven blend, and you have the opportunity to win that. The Aya Calm is just like what it sounds like. It is your wind down for the day. So it allows you to rest, relax, reset, as well as go to sleep. And so you can buy them on the Shopify website. If you choose to purchase them, they're able to be purchased as a pair as well as a separate individually. And so I'll put the Shopify information up just so you'll have that. So if you want to purchase any of these things, you can purchase them in the Shopify store. But for the giveaway, you have the opportunity to win these things. So with the giveaway, you cannot win the sets, but you can pick one of the teas if that's what you choose to win. So again, remember, here's the information for the shop, the Aya shop. You can find it on Shopify. Either search the Aya shop, AYA, or you can go to the-aya-shop-2 myshopify.com. That is the link to get to the store. All right. So announcements out the way. Let's get into talking a little bit more about the circle and understanding the difference between support and performance. This is where I want us to move. In the book, I talk about the circle not just being a seating arrangement. It's not just a way that we arrange the people that are present. It is a value system. So it is sacred in a way that it structures everyone to be seen. No one's left behind anyone else. The gathering basically connects, it brings softness, and it makes safety for those who are present. What I call this, again, as I talked at the top of this episode, but also in the book specifically, is a spiritual technology. It is very much a refusal of the colonial logic that was built on separation and hierarchy. One of the reasons why I love framing it this way is because it reminds us that the circle is not just something that is symbolic. It is a way for us to gather that says no one here is disposable, no one is above another, no one is invisible, no one here is being meant to be carrying the things that they have alone. And so I think that that is really important. Another thing that I make clear in the book is that not all circles are created equal. So there are times when things mimic safety, but they're more so performative. And so we have to take that into account. Um, we have to realize that where performance is involved, that means that while the person may be well intentioned, right? They just may be unprepared or out of their depth. So we don't want to say that they're doing this because they intend to be performative, but they may not be able to allow the people that are present to do what is needed, which is to bring to the surface the truths that need to be spoken. It asks the discernment questions that I think are essential, right? If you're in a circle that's not just for formality, but it's for friendship, it's for ministry, it's for all the different things, family, then the questions you ask are, who is in this circle? Who is setting the tone? Are there rituals of beginning and ending that need to be in place here? Are there clear boundaries? If vulnerability is present, is it reciprocated or is it mocked or extracted? That last question, I feel like, is a word within itself. Vulnerability being reciprocated, mocked, or extracted is something that we need to talk about. It's probably one of the reasons why people are reluctant to be vulnerable because it's not handled the way it should be handled. Because there are spaces where people love your openness as long as it serves them. They love it when you're honest, as long as you keep it tidy and neat and it doesn't make them uncomfortable. They love your labor, your support, your care, your listening, all the emotional availability that you give. But the minute that you need depth in return from them, the room gets empty. That's not community care. That is uneven access to your humanity. And a true circle at its core has reciprocity. It has a rhythm. A true circle is very much about integrity. So in the book, I talk about the fact that when you're in a true circle, that tears are going to be honored, your silence is going to be protected, there's space made for your grief, and the space is intentionally held. It's not something arbitrary, it's not something performative. There are different things like water bowls, drums, communal singing, poetry, ritual openings and closings that are done in circle practices in the diaspora that all serve a deeper purpose of making care seem intentional rather than accidental. It shows that there's mindfulness here. People care and they want to show you that that there is care. So what does look like in our real life? Because I'm pretty sure that's a question that you have. It looks like having at least a few people with whom you can do the not having to perform okayness with. Have your group that you do not have to be on. If you're not okay, you can state that and you know number 1, it will be honored. Number 2, it will not be mocked, and number 3, it will not be abandoned or taken advantage of. It looks like support that doesn't disappear when the truth you have is inconvenient. You're able to say, I'm tired, and not be immediately handed a solution or immediately handed a sermon and preached at for being tired, or even worse, dismissed. It looks like confidentiality, and then there's follow up. It looks like boundaries that make honesty safer, not harder. It looks like relationships where the care is not measured only by how they respond to your crisis, but by them showing up consistently. It is mutuality, not sameness, mutuality, because capacity can differ, right? The seasons we are in differ, but healthy circles are not built on one person constantly bleeding out all the time so that everyone can call it community. There will be times where we need reciprocity. So that means that community care is not the opposite of discernment. It is inclusive of that. Some people hear community and they think that that means that everybody gets full access, full details, full emotional entry all the time. No, that is absolutely the opposite of what I'm saying. There is a discernment that has to happen that says part of what makes community safe is being the discerning person to say, this person is a safe person to be in this community. My book is really clear on this. It's clear that the promise of safety must be backed up by practice. That looks like confidentiality. That looks like consent. That looks like clarity about what the space can hold. It looks like understanding what the rituals help people close out or do or reorient themselves with after they're dealing with difficult material within the circle. When it's done well, the circle really does help with trauma. It should not re traumatize you, it should reintegrate you better into understanding and moving through the traumas that you've experienced. It's so important that we understand this piece because some of us have been harmed in these spaces that were called supportive because they re traumatized us. Instead of reintegrating us to feel like we could now move forward after processing through some of those experiences that we've had. Think about it. Some of us have been in rooms where the vulnerability was so mishandled that it was judged, it was overexposed, and don't clutch your pearls. It was spiritualized when it shouldn't have been. And then it turned into gossip. So, of course, discernment matters. Of course, trust has to be earned. Every person doesn't get the same access. Not every room deserves access to your tenderness. You do need to pay attention to this. I would say the answer to unsafe community is not lifelong isolation, because that's usually how some people get here because they have not been held properly, because they have been mishandled. That is how they end up in these spaces of isolation. The correct answer is better circles. Have truer circles, have honest circles, have a better rhythm with your circles with boundaries and reverence. That's the answer, not going into isolation. And I also think that that's where the healing starts to look less like self preservation, self improvement, and more like a sacred belonging. You are now putting yourself into a space that says you're welcome here, you're respected here, and we desire for you to be here. We are going to take another break and then we're going to come back and we are going to do our Aya pause for this episode. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast, The Aya Way. We are so glad to have you here. I know you have already liked and shared the podcast. Please like and share so we can get the word out to those who would be blessed by what we are talking about here on the show. So, we are going to get into talking about the Aya pause for this episode. So, for those of you who are oldies but goodies in this environment, then you understand what this looks like. For those of you who are new, the Aya pause is a space for us to do what it says: stop and focus and return. So, let's pause here. If you can, I want you to take one full breath in through your nose, and I want you to release it slowly through your mouth. Take another in through the nose release it through your mouth. One more, take it in through the nose, release it through the mouth. Now, I want you to ask yourself gently and honestly, when was the last time that I felt honestly held in community? And this is not being admired, this is not being needed, feeling useful, not being included in a way that was superficial. When was the last time that you felt honestly held? And then as you answer that question, think about what spaces in your life feel sacred enough that allows for truth to be present. What spaces drain you while calling themselves supportive? What kind of care have you needed that you have not named out loud? So, in the I of Pauses pages of the book, one of the questions that is there, or several questions that are there, are this: when was the last time that I honestly felt held in community? What practices do I need to bring back into my circle for it to feel sacred? How do I want to hold space differently moving forward? And then the last line is: the circle is not a retreat from reality, it is a rehearsal for liberation. I want you to please sit with that. The circle is not a retreat from reality, it is a rehearsal for liberation. That means that community care is not about escapism. It's a practice. What it is, it's where we learn how to tell the truth, how to be witnessed, how to respect limits, how to show up with reciprocity, how to be accountable and let laughter and grief coexist without feeling like one cannot be there if the other is present. It's also how to be human without being consumed by performance. So I want you to take one more deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then say this to yourself slowly: I am not meant to heal alone. I am allowed to seek circles that are safe, honest, and mutual. And I do not have to call isolation strength. We're going to take a quick break and then we will be back for the next segment in the episode. Be back in just a second. We're back, and I want us to talk about building the kind of community that can hold you. So, we've identified some things here. We've outlined not only what the dynamic is and the practicality into our everyday living, but I'm very much solution focused. I want us to talk about what does this look like in practice. So, I want us to close out as we get near to the end of the episode with leaving you with practical questions that you can ask. What does it look like to actually move toward community care, even if you have been doing it isolated, disappointed, over functioning, or unsure of who you can trust? Here's the first step that I would give you. I would say stop measuring your support system only by the proximity to you. Just because someone is around you does not mean that they are in true relationship with you. I would say support does not just need um, to be about who you have access to. It's about who can hold your truth with care. Okay. Secondly, and before I get to the second one, I'll just give you a personal example. My support circle transcends geographic locations. So I do have those that are close to me in proximity of where I live, but then I also have a part of my core circle that live out of state and I talk to regularly. They hold me even though they're not here when it comes to proximity. So don't discount the value of that. Second, identify where mutuality already exists, even in seed form. So sometimes people overlook the beginning of real community starting to develop because it's not dramatic. It's not something that's flashy or splashing in a way that draws your attention. It may be that you have a person that's checking on you consistently. It could be the friend that always allows you to be honest with them. It could be that elder that takes time with you to allow your presence to settle and they sit with you and offer you presence. One group where you do not have to leave feeling like you performed while you were there. That might be your starting place. Healthy circles often begin in a small way. Third, pay attention to your body. Your body often knows before your mind catches up. When you are in these spaces, when you are around people, do you feel like you're being contracted or monitored or overexposed? Do you feel heavier, ashamed, or depleted when you leave their presence? Do you feel more settled, more able to breathe, more honest, more like yourself? Your body is basically telling you what is happening. The body is not going to always be dramatic, but it is always going to be informative. It's going to tell the story and give you information. Fourth, practice being in or being the kind of person who helps create the circle that you actually need, right? We always talk about be the change you want to see in the world. Be the person that you want to see in your circle. That doesn't mean overgiving. That doesn't mean trying to buy affection. It means offering integrity. It means listening without controlling, following up with people that you care about. It means respecting consent. It means not extracting vulnerability that you're not willing to honor yourself. And it means letting care be reciprocal and not performative. And then, fifth, I would say let community be both practical as well as sacred. Sometimes people talk about their care so abstractly that it kind of like floats away into the ether. But community care can be very concrete. It can be, I need a meal. It could be, I need a ride. I need you to pray for me. I need help with childcare or shared resources. I need honest conversation. I need to check in with you after an event. I need to remember because this is a hard date for me. I need you to show up for me and remember that this date is going to be hard. Sitting with me in silence, being able to laugh together, help each other regulate, and refusing to let a person in your circle vanish inside their own pain. That is what community looks like. And for those of you who have been disappointed, because I know that you have had these experiences, I have had these experiences. I want to say this to you with care. It is understandable. If trust has become hard, it is understandable that you have retreated inward and you're now learning to keep your needs close to the vest. It's understandable that certain rooms have taught you that visibility is not the same thing as safety. So please do not let those experiences convince you that your deepest design, the way you are made, is to self contain. We're not designed that way. We are built to be in permanent connection with people. We're not built for emotional exile. So, one of the most beautiful lines in the book again, the circle allows someone to say, I see you, I believe you, and I remember you. It reminds us that in community, witnessing the weight of pain is shared. Your story doesn't float into the void. It's not some generational wound that begins to close through sacred breath, ritual, or reverent listening. What it is what I want for all of us. It's not just being content with the healing, but being the containers for the healing. It's not just offering the language for the support, but being the practice and actually putting into praxis what that support looks like. You're not just getting a bigger audience of people, but you're offering a true circle, being present. And so this week, that's my invitation to you. Do one thing that will move you towards real belonging. I want you to reach out to someone safe. I want you to answer honestly when somebody trustworthy asks you how you are. Notice which spaces are draining you and name one kind of support that you need. I want you to take time this week to create one small ritual of care with another person. Let people witness your truth without having to clean it up. You don't need to give the sanitized version, give it to them the raw way and see how they handle that. Because isolation is not healed just by you having the willpower. It's healed through relationship, it's healed by witness, by practice, and by the sacred courage to let yourself be held. So typically, I would go out and come back and do our call to action and our closing remarks. And I think that this is a good place to stop. So I want you to thank you, number one. Let me start with thanking you for spending this time with me on the IOA podcast. So for the call to action, if this episode has done anything for you, one way that you can help is by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with those around you who you think would be beneficial. This would be beneficial for them. Also, another way you support what we do is by purchasing items through the Aya shop on Shopify. That is something that is beneficial, that helps us continue to do what we're doing and to expand the work that we are doing. Remember, if you are listening to us on WDJY, we have this exclusive giveaway that is for WDJY listeners only. And you can go to bit.ly/WDJY spring giveaway. Remember, WDJY is all caps, spring and giveaway is also capitalized. This is important. Again, if the episode spoke to you, please share it. Please remember that you do not have to continue to carrying things alone. Also, I would love to hear from you through the Substack community. We would love to have you on the iowa.substack.com for you to communicate with me in between the episodes so we can talk about what you have been learning and gleaning from the episodes and what's happening for you throughout the week. Make sure that you understand that you can also leave me voicemails if you want to let me know. I have a SpeakPipe account where you can do that. That is www.speakpipe.com/the IOA. And that allows me to hear what is happening with you. And just as a reminder, as we exit out, remember that there might be a time where you need to be reminded of the fact that healing is not only personal, but it's communal. So as you move through this week, remember the circle is a friend. It's not a luxury. It's not an accessory to your healing. It is the actual container. It is the actual rhythm. And it is how we survive and how we will rise. Until next week, take care of yourself and make sure that you continue to heal loudly so that you can live softly. This is the IOA Podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Make sure to like and subscribe.